Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody to the November 2021 River Road Community Organization General Meeting. Good to have you here. The way we usually start these off, we start with introductions and we go round robin and invite folks to tell us who they are, where they live, how long they've lived in the neighborhood, and whether or not you're a member of the executive board. So I am John Belcher. I've lived here since 2010. Yeah, 2010. And I live off of Arbor, and I am one of the co-chairs. So how about Jan?
We have two Jans.
There's two Jans. I apologize. Let's do Jan Wooling first, and then you can go next, Jan Spencer.
Okay. Hi, Jan. I'm Jan Wooling, and I've lived here for 3 months, and I love it. And that's it. Forgot the other part.
Where you live?
Mary Lane.
All right. We're neighbors. Okay, Jan Spencer.
Hey, hi, I'm Jan Spencer, and I live here on Benjamin for about 21 years, and I'm on the board. Glad to see everybody.
And who would you like to go next, Jan?
Savannah.
Hi, I have been here for going on 4 years. I live on Maywood Avenue and kind of a newbie and very interested in the community.
Welcome.
About Don Metheny?
Yeah, Don, excuse me, Don Matheny. I'm in Southeast neighbors, but I'm a big fan of what you're doing up there. And I kind of keep an eye on what you're doing. So we may want to adapt that too. Thank you. Carlene and Pat.
Pat Riley, live on Marion Lane. I've been here 37 years, I guess. And I'm on the neighborhood engagement team with St. Benny's for the Iris Place apartment.
And I'm Carlene Riley, and I've been here for 42 years and live on Marion Lane. And so let's go with Wendy Friedman.
Wendy, just popped in. We're introducing yourself and how long you've lived in the neighborhood where you live. Maybe she doesn't have her audio up yet. Let's go with me. My name's Claire. I'm on the board, and I've lived here for 11 years. And we will move on to Joshua.
I'm Joshua, and I've been in the neighborhood for somewhere between 4 and 5 years, probably. Live over by Fairway Drive. I'm on the board.
Next.
Dwight.
Dwight.
Oh, I didn't hear. Dwight Owens, RRCO Board Secretary, E&I Representative, and Chair of the North Eugene On-House and Affordable Housing Committee. Who we go with? Julie Hume.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie, and I've lived here 37 years, and we have our land is right next to Maury Jacobs Park, right on the river and River Road. I'm involved with Iris Place Neighborhood Engagement Team and also working with unhoused issues, as well as Greenway. So let's see. Trying to see who we haven't seen. Louisa.
Hey everybody, Louisa D here. I'm a member of the CAC for the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan over on Sunnyside Drive for the last 12 years. How about Harry?
Harry Sanger, Rosewood Avenue for 2 years now, and I'm on the RRCO board and go to Ellen.
Hi, my name is Ellen Rifkin. I've lived here for 16 years. I'm on Canute Lane, and I'm on the Social Justice Committee. And I'll call on Ravi.
Ravi Logan, I'm 20 years on Horn Lane. And I'm not sure, I've been trying to track here. I think, Gary, have you gone?
Yes, Gary and Janet Reber. We've been here about 6 years.
Okay. And what street?
Heritage.
Heritage. Uh-huh.
And next, Wendy, are you ready to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Wendy Friedman. I live on Sunnyside, and I've been here about 20 something years. And this is my first community meeting, so
yay.
Yay.
Welcome.
And I'll pass it on to Jan.
I think
Jan, to Jan's.
I think we're down to Lee and Kelly. Last but not least.
Hi, everyone. We are Lee and Kelly Pembleton. We live on River Road near Canute Lane, and we've been here for about 2.5 years.
Great. And also want to welcome James from 350.org. You want to introduce yourself, James?
Sure. My name is Jim New. I live on Webster Street up by Bobolink Park in Santa Clara area. I've been here about 6 years.
Great. Thanks for showing up tonight.
Hey, thanks everybody. The first announcement is the one I should have made at the beginning. Would everybody please sign into the chat with your name? That serves as our attendance record, and it's important for 2 reasons. We need to show the city that we're an active, engaged neighborhood. Your attendance is part of that. And also, should we take an official vote, you need to have attended a meeting in the last year. So if that becomes challenged, we can go back to a spreadsheet of our previous attendance and confirm or deny your ability to vote. And speaking of which, we will have a vote coming up to affirm the board's nomination of a treasurer. But let's do the rest of the announcements first. Does someone have an announcement?
I do. Oh, Jan does, and I do.
Okay.
So on a city council on Wednesday at noon, they're going to be discussing the update on the climate action plan 2.0. We asked them to come to our meeting tonight, but they were too busy, and this must be why. So you can tune into the city council meeting and get that update instead.
Or provide testimony, right?
Or provide testimony, that's right.
Okay, speaking of providing testimony, I've got a couple of land use issues. Let's see if I can find this to share. Yeah, here it is. First of all, we received notice that there is a proposal for a subdivision in the neighborhood, and that is at 825 Horn Lane. If you know the neighborhood, this is the lot right here. What they are proposing to do is basically carry this driveway all the way up to the end and carve out 5 lots. They're going to have a neighborhood meeting, and that date will be selected soon, and I'll put that in our neighborhood webpage if you want to participate. Those of you that are nearby will get notice anyway. The other one is that on Wednesday, December 1st, there is going to be a public hearing on approval of land use applications, site review, Willamette Greenway permit, and adjustment review for River Road Apartments, which is the last large undeveloped site on River Road, on the river in the River Road neighborhood at 615 and 621 River Road. They're proposing to build 43 buildings, 46 units, 3 stories high. And the argument that they're making for the Willamette Greenway is that all land use decisions for needed housing, which they claim their housing is, have to be in a clear and objective process, and that there is no clear and objective process for the Willamette Greenway, so they can ignore it. So I will put my email and address is in the chat. I know that Gary and Julie want to be involved in this process, but if anybody else wants to, let me know and we'll get together and figure out whether or not we can defeat that argument. The things that I think the neighborhood would like to see is a public access through the site, and secondarily, that are not secondarily, but just as importantly, that there be some sort of vegetation screen between 3-story apartments and the West Bank Park, which is immediately adjacent to, and unfortunately has no trees whatsoever in this.
Hey, John, keep your announcement short, please. We have a line.
Okay. So
Thank you.
If you're interested, please get in touch with me via email. That's it for me for now.
Thank you. We have Jan, Harry, and Pat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, John, thanks for keeping track of all that stuff. I want to announce that this coming Saturday, I'm having a site tour here at my property, kind of a follow-up to this evening, a site tour of a property that produces a bit more basic needs on site: food, water, energy. That's at my place. I'm going to put that info in chat. And then in the next month, I'm going to be doing 3 Zoom presentations, and they're all related to this evening's program. A lot of really great examples of people reducing eco footprints and doing the kind of pioneer work for a more prepared, resilient, and towards sustainability. So again, I'm going to put that info into the chat. And
it's also in the newsletter. Thank you, Jan.
It's in the newsletter. Thanks, Claire. It's also in the newsletter. Actually, a little bit more detail is in the newsletter. So good. Thanks.
Harry?
I think timely to our discussion tonight, the Lane County Public Health Advisory Committee today just had Mark Nyland on to give a presentation on climate and public health. And
Harry,
you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
You hit mute.
Hit mute instead of, yeah. Sorry. So I posted the link to the audio minutes there. They're not posted for the November meeting yet, but once they are, there's about a 45-minute presentation on climate. And I just wanted to reiterate what John was saying. I drove by and saw the public notice for the development on River Road. And I think it's a real shame that that and the Potter's Field have gone almost unchallenged by the neighborhood. We need to do a better job of protecting our last few green spaces.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Pat and Carlene.
Yes, I want to give you an update on the Iris Place affordable housing project just directly north of Berry Mart on the east side of River Road. The projected completion date is November 24th, which means that residents can start moving in at that time. Also, St. Vinny's has proposed in conjunction with River Road and the neighborhood engagement team that they want to do a virtual open house walkthrough kind of thing. And that's tentatively scheduled for the 18th to the 19th of this month. That will include Jewel and Zainin and myself, who are members of the neighborhood engagement team. Also will include obviously St. Vinny's staff and some people from Miley, who is the developer, the construction company. And then in January, it's tentatively proposed that the St. Vinny's Resident Services Director make a presentation to the general body to answer questions or comments, that kind of thing. But it looks like they're finally getting the thing wrapped up. It's been a real struggle because of COVID and supply chain problems, those kinds of things, but it looks like they're on track to have a successful completion.
Great, thank you, Pat. Julie?
Yes, I just wanted to make a little correction to something Harry referred to. Actually, the development at Potter's Field, The Lombard Apartments were heartily challenged. We went all the way to the State Court of Appeals on that, as well as had 700 to 900 people at various points opposing that and working at all different levels. And I'm hoping that we can continue that momentum because of the Greenway being in jeopardy. I just wanted to put out a query to everyone. I'm getting a lot of postcards from developers and realtors about selling our property. And I'm just wondering if other people in the River Road neighborhood are receiving those postcards as well. Thank you.
Yes. I always send it back and say, I don't like speculators, get out of the neighborhood.
Whoa, Claire.
Okay, any final announcements before we move on? Okay, John, treasurer.
Oh, thank you. A couple of months ago, the board moved to appoint Harry Sanger as our treasurer with the resignation of Zaina Telschow. And our charter says that the board nominates, but the membership has to affirm. So I'm going to move that we affirm the selection of Harry Sanger to be our treasurer until we have our next set of elections, which will be in March, or actually April with the new board. So would anyone like to second that motion?
I will.
Jan seconds it. Is there any discussion? Harry, you probably should admit that you did agree to do this job so people don't think we're roping you in.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
We're on record already.
Any further discussion? All those who have attended a meeting in the past year and want to vote in the affirmative, please raise your hands.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Okay, all those 13. All those opposed?
And we have
no
some
opposition.
abstentions.
Any abstentions?
Harry's abstaining and Luisa's abstaining. Okay.
Okay.
Myself.
Fair enough. Well, the motion passes. Thank you very much. And now
Thanks,
we can
everybody.
put Harry on the signature card. Thanks.
Okay, but that raises a good point, which is that we are looking for people to be nominated to run for the board in the spring. And John and I are happy to have conversations with anybody interested. So please step forward or twist the arm of the person next to you.
And actually, we're going to have a special election in January because Zaina will be leaving, not January, December, next month. Zaina will be leaving the board, so we need to fill his seat as well. So there's an even more imminent opportunity to get involved. So please, again, my email is in the chat. Give me an email, call, and we can talk about it and see if it's something you want to do. Thank you.
Okay, we have a full meeting agenda tonight, so we should get started. We wanted to talk down about climate change since it's on the international agenda. That's, kind of an overwhelming and huge agenda item. So we've really been kind of grappling about how to do that. I think a lot of us feel a little disempowered with the global meetings and also, on a lot of the different levels of the, even the federal level about, not really having an avenue for our activism to be expressed at that level. And then there's a lot of programming and policy making happening on the city and the county level. As I mentioned earlier, it's been hard to find out what's going on with that. 350.org waged a long campaign to give them feedback around the original draft of the Climate Action Plan and was successful in getting some changes in that. So then there's always individual actions that we can take, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, about having some impact on the climate. And I firmly believe that those individual actions can be multiplied with community impact. So that's something that hasn't really been addressed. What does it mean for a neighborhood level, or even a smaller clusters of neighbors or community to take on some of these issues? What does that look like? And we're hoping to address that in breakout discussion groups tonight. So one of my favorite slogans is action is the antidote to despair. So we want to leave the meeting with some ideas about what kind of next steps we can take as a community. And that's the plan. We're going to have Louisa kick us off. Louisa is on the Eugene Sustainability Commission, in addition to her service on representing us on the neighborhood plan. And a lot of what we've been grappling with is, how does the neighborhood plan intersect with the climate action plan? And perhaps we can strengthen some pieces of the neighborhood plan implementation, because there's a whole section of the neighborhood plan called community, and we're the ones who have to implement that section. So this is a beginning place to have that conversation. So we're gonna talk with Louisa, and then Jan and John are going to fill in some pieces from her conversation, and then we're going to break out into discussion groups to address some specific ideas about how we might implement some of that, and then we'll come back and report out and debrief. Okay, so go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, Claire. Hi, everybody. Good evening. As Claire mentioned, I am been on the CAC working on the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan for 4 odd years now, and also on the Sustainability Commission for the City of Eugene, mostly because of my position as a sustainability professional in my day job. So I do work for Good Company, which is the consulting firm that has played a part in doing a lot of the analyses for the larger level plans that we are talking about. I'm going to be speaking tonight as a resident and a neighbor, not as a sustainability commissioner. I don't speak for the commission, and of course not as a representative of Good Company in this role. I was not working for Good Company when they did the Eugene Climate Action Plan. So I know of it more as a citizen than as an analyst. I did make a deck because this ask is huge. So I have some slides to share to walk us through it. What I'm really hoping for is to kind of think about the scale. Scale is important in these matters, because I think, especially as Americans, we get told to fix things on our own. We get told, how are you going to address climate change? And I also want us all to feel a little bit of grace, because in fact, a lot of folks are doing the best they can, and the problems are being addressed at various infuriating levels, from Glasgow right now to the infrastructure bill that was just passed at the federal level, to implementation of the recovery funds from COVID at the state level on down to us. So scale is really important. I just want to make sure really quick everybody can see my screen. Yes, superb. So on the right, that scale is actually from the Eugene Climate Action Plan, current emissions for carbon. All emissions are generalized to CO2. CO2 is not the most potent greenhouse gas. It's just the most common one. So methane, F gases, which are hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants, have orders of magnitude more impact, but we generalize everything to CO2e. So that's a number you'll see a lot in climate stuff, which is equivalent. What is the equivalent in carbon? So our current trajectory is to get to 1.1 million metric tons of CO2 using this business as usual. We need to drop that almost 800,000 metric tons per year until 2030, which is not very far away. As Claire noted, we actually went backwards, and we'll talk really briefly about what happened and why. But on average, the American consumption or the American emissions are on par only with the Canadians and the Australians. We use the most power per person in the world. We create the most carbon emissions per person, not per country. So the way the Eugene Climate Action Plan talks about this is in big buckets. This will get more relevant to our neighborhood, but just to give you a sense, most of our impact is in transportation. That's moving ourselves as well as all of the things we buy around. We have large transit corridors in Eugene, not only the I-5, but the other arterial highways. We actually have industry in this city, which is not common, which means that we have more trucks moving in and out doing all of the business of those industries, as well as the rail corridor. So that's a big part of it. Building energy, electricity is a relatively clean grid. We use about 90% on average fossil-free energy. That fluctuates, and we'll get to that too. But natural gas is an infrastructure that we think we're gonna advocate to move away from because it's locked into fossil fuels, right? The electricity grid can change. We can work with renewables, we can work with other sources of electricity, but natural gas is a fossil fuel. And renewable natural gas from other sources like the landfill don't really scale. The other little fugitive emissions are what happens when all of the waste goes to the landfill. It leaks methane. So they're proposing an anaerobic digester for Short Mountain landfill, which would actually pre-capture all of the organic materials and then harvest the emissions that come out of that to be fed into energy generation. It's a large project from the county with support from a lot of other folks. It needs funding, maybe the infrastructure bill. And then the tricky one that I'll just briefly mention down the road is refrigerant leakage. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So these are the three big buckets. How this relates to us as neighbors who live in a community, in a neighborhood, who don't have impact on a lot of these things is how we think about our own system resilience. I think the neighborhood plan put a lot of thought into the systems we rely on, from water to energy to stormwater drainage to shade canopy. Trust and community is a big part of why we're all sitting here tonight, which I really appreciate. And also a big part of the resilience that we will need to both mitigate emissions and adapt to climate change. So both have to happen at once. We have to reduce our emissions dramatically and immediately, and we also have to adapt to get ready for what's coming no matter what we do about it. And then the idea of density, which impacts both transit, places for our community members to live, work, and be with us, and then also bring closer those economies and supply chains so that we can work with each other as neighbors to meet our needs, as opposed to going to a global corporation off of a semi-truck. So to start with, two places where mitigation is going to be really important for our neighborhood as well as our city is the fossil fuels that we use in our buildings. This is actually this is out of the Climate Action Plan. Those are metric tons reduced by what they have currently. Obviously, it's not enough, but it goes to show how far we have to go, because these are the big 12 basically large level shareholders in the city, places like LCC, EWEB, U of O. What can they do and what are they committing to do? So the rest of it is on us. I won't go through what all of these mean, but basically removal of natural gas, mitigating natural gas use in buildings, tightening up our homes, electrifying where we can, and then cleaning up the grid are going to be really, really big parts of how we get fossil fuels out of buildings and how we use less energy overall. So I'll just start really quickly with renewables. This is the 18.3 is the goal number in the neighborhood plan, where we do talk about that this is a goal, that we want to promote renewable resources and energy conservation. And one of those areas of challenge around renewable resource is battery storage, right? You have to either feed the energy you generate into the grid, or you store it on site. There are current rebates at the state level and investment coming at the federal level to add rebates for homes, especially low-income homes, to add renewable energy on site. Oregon doesn't have a great return on investment for solar. For the embodied energy in the actual solar panels, it takes about 8 years to recoup that with the amount of solar we have in our community, just by where we live. A lot of other places in this country, it's 2 years. That doesn't mean it's not worth it. It just means we have to think about that scale. We also have cheap electricity. So other states like California, where electricity is very expensive and they have a lot more sun, that's why they have a lot more push that direction. It's also illegal to disconnect from the grid. So we're kind of locked in there. And the technology for battery storage, especially for solar, is still kind of prohibitively high. There's challenges with mining lithium. It's beyond this conversation tonight, but it's something to watch, something to think about. If you can afford investment in solar, if you have interest. I have solar on my house. I haven't paid a summer electricity bill in 10 years, and I'm super grateful to have it. I don't have battery storage. So when the power goes out, I still don't have power. So it's a gap in the system that I look forward to seeing more investment and rebates and incentives to help pay for those technologies so people can actually get them in their houses. Oops. Electrifying appliances actually scales to a huge degree, a surprising degree. What this means is that low efficiency resistance heat in old homes uses orders of magnitude more electricity than a modern ductless heat pump. So when there are rebates available from every major utility, Energy Trust of Oregon, lots of places to think about where moving from one technology, from natural gas or from old technology and becoming more efficient, and then also electrifying appliances that are efficient and use less energy for the same output, right? For the same thing, an old refrigerator uses many times more energy than a new refrigerator. So where you can think about things that might use a lot of energy. The thing that I wanted to come back to with Claire's point was why our energy use in buildings went up. Peak power, so we have 90% fossil-free energy most of the time. Peak power comes in when we all get home at 5 p.m. and we crank up our heat and we turn on our TV and we turn on the oven and we all use a ton more electricity all at once. And suddenly there isn't enough energy in our local grid to serve that need, and they have to pull extra power, they're called peaker plants. They're almost all natural gas. So the idea of smart meters, the idea of real-time checking how much energy you're using is to create diversified pricing. So come sometime soon, our electricity bills will show peak power use and non-peak power use. And by training ourselves to look and think about when we're using electricity, how we're using electricity, that's an opportunity to lower, they call it shaving the peak, to lower that spike of all of us using energy, because that spike moment is when it's the most fossil intensive. So the smart meters, people have some challenges with it. It uses radio frequencies, less than a cell phone. But that's something to be aware of as an individual, as a community, that how we're relating to our public utilities, where our power comes from, and how to use it at a kind of more responsible rate. Because if you use peak power, it'll cost more. This topic, electrification, is not just specifically addressed in the neighborhood plan at all. It is part of the climate action plan for the city, the county, and the state. And the feds are very, very focused on this area because it's a place they can just hand people money to upgrade. Overall, Oregon has terribly insulated houses. And it's because—
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just to know, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. This is good stuff, Claire.
Yeah. Do you want a few minutes to talk about it later or not?
Okay, good point.
I'd rather hear Louisa talk about it.
Well,
so
not up for a vote.
In the neighborhood plan, so the 18.33, 18.12, we're talking about how to incentivize developers to offset infrastructure needs with something they do. Can we reduce charges for good behavior? If we do something that's great, like retrofits that will make a house use a ton less energy, maybe we can help offset some of the development charges so that we can reward that, that sort of community mindedness, and not basically charge the same amount as if they're going to be using double the power. Energy efficiency and cost of houses, we kind of talked about that, thinking about efficiency in your house. Phasing out natural gas. I wanted to flag something that's coming up, which is a fossil-free risk bond proposal from the Sustainability Commission, which is actually going to ask that users or storers of large amounts of toxic chemicals in the city of Eugene and fossil fuels pay for the liability that they are asking the city to pay if there's a disaster. So that is something that's relevant to River Road, Santa Clara, because of our proximity to the Prairie Road fuel storage site across the train tracks, as well as lots of other very close industries that house large amounts of chemical. So keep your eye out for that, which is coming up for a work session with the City Council soon. I will skip refrigerants for time. I know, Claire, one thing we wanted to talk about was basically consumption. The average food that you buy travels 1,600 miles, and the average American throws away about 5 pounds of trash a day. So anything that you can do as an individual to reduce that, to mitigate it, from composting into the, the yard waste bins, buying secondhand, sharing resources where you can. There's lots of cool apps out now that I see people swapping. I got a bunch of plywood, I got extra insulation, and keeping that stuff out of the landfill like Bring does, but at our local level.
So we gave you 5 more minutes and took it out of discussion.
Okay. So the biggest bucket that I don't want to skip is transportation. The biggest bang for the buck in terms of emissions reductions at scale are going to be electrifying our vehicles, because our cities and our whole culture is designed around long distance transportation, and it's very difficult to make all of that functional either by bike ped or mass transit. It's it's hard to build the system over an existing system. So getting people out of cars where we can, and then fuel switching where we can't. So you're going to see R99, which is basically a renewable diesel coming out from mostly corn and soy, to replace the diesel trucking fleet, which will immediately drop emissions orders of magnitude. Will be coming online by 2025. Like this quote from the Eugene CAP, a huge amount of their infrastructure and transportation focused projects are around bike and ped, keeping people as much as they can comfortable and safe and willing to get out of their cars and use alternative pathways. The impact of COVID on commutes, right? A lot of people didn't go anywhere. Enabled the technology for broadband and other things for rural communities, especially, to stay home and work, which is actually going to have a pretty measurable impact on our ability to continue to do that if your job allows. And that's actually done more for the telecommute movement than any policy ever could, because we suddenly all have, if you have a kind of a job that is a computer-based job, you might have a home office, you have broadband, you're set up to do it. So continuing to do that as an office worker will also motivate economic development in neighborhoods where usually it's a bedroom community, people will come and going. River Road, Santa Clara, I think qualifies under that category. So this is jumping into the actual places that we talk about this in the River Road neighborhood plan. Resilience and safety, helping people think about how we want to deal with incoming density. Density is coming. The city's climate action plan, the county's climate action plan, does account for climate refugees. Oregon will have a more stable water supply and a more stable agricultural, actually even an increased agricultural output under climate change. And a lot of places in the South, Southwest are going to become more and more challenging to inhabit. So people are going to be moving here because they have to. They're called climate refugees, and we can expect lots of them. So how we maintain our community and how we adjust to those changing circumstances and kind of, create a bigger table, as it were, as those things come about. And these are the ideas that we had in places to do that. I go in, there's more of these. So compatible infill, welcoming environment, how do we increase affordable housing opportunities and advocate for the unhoused? These are all ideas that we've had. This section specifically is under that community area. So these are places that we need people power to do this stuff, because actually the city, the county don't have the ability to facilitate community conversations or work with nonprofits in our neighborhood. You know, this is our work to do. Again, this is the whole resilience section about neighborhood food production, renewable, the gray water, stormwater infiltration, all of the places that we're talking about both mitigation of impacts and basically adaptation to what's coming in terms of increased challenges to our basic functioning systems from the impacts of climate change, which I admit I didn't go into specifically, but there's lots of resources out there if you're interested. So the things that I think are special about River Road and Santa Clara are a tree canopy, our water systems that flow through the neighborhood and have not been channelized, and so provide natural riparian habitat corridors, shade. We have, I think, augmented home values because of our mature trees, as you heard from your presentation with Ian Powell a few months ago. He and I would love to work on measuring and mapping the canopy in River Road, Santa Clara, and using that as a launching point to start basically protecting and enhancing the systems that we rely on. We don't even realize that we rely on, especially around stormwater infiltration in the neighborhood. So that, in a very short nutshell, was my goal of getting across kind of the gist of the global local connection between all of these different issues. I'm happy to take questions, but I know we also need to move on.
Great job, Louisa. We've had some requests for your slides, and if you will make them available, we'll try to post them on the website or something like that.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is a huge amount of stuff to take in and to process and to be able to think about. I know, and we all know that Jan Spencer has done a lot of thinking and action on this. And John, before we go to that, did you want to add anything about the neighborhood plan?
Well, Louisa did a far better job than I could about the details that we have put into this effort. But if you're not aware of the neighborhood plan, in a nutshell, we've been working for several years on developing a neighborhood plan. It's been sort of on hiatus, except within the planning committee, because of our challenge in getting back with folks with our thoughts with COVID. There's some strong issues we need to work through, but hopefully within the next few months, you'll be hearing how to re-engage in that process.
Thank you. Jan, make it brief, please. We're running out of time already. You're on mute. Jan, this is going to be too much information for 5 minutes. People already know about the site tour. It's in the newsletter. Maybe you can skip to 1 or 2 slides that are important. And you're on mute.
Okay, please join us on Saturday and for the Zoom presentations. First comment, and thanks to Louisa, it's a huge topic. Climate change is not an isolated issue. It's closely related to just about every other social, economic, political, and environmental problem we have. Our challenges largely come down to humans are using too much stuff. Personally, I see no way our affluence and convenience is going to ever become green and sustainable. So what do we do about that? I think one of the most important task is to reduce our ecological footprints, to simply use a lot less stuff and be a lot smarter. I personally recommend the footprint calculator. It's found at footprintcalculator.org by the Global Footprint Network. and it asks all these questions. And then at the end, it tells you how many planet Earths would it take for everybody in the world to live like you. It can be.
Okay, that footprint calculator is really a great tool. It's also helps you think about equity. And I am sorry to cut you off, Jan, but that's basically all we have time for now. And once again, if you want to make your slides available, we can add those to the meeting link. Okay. And so now, now I want to give you an opportunity to give us some feedback about what kinds of questions you think you would most be interested in discussing. Okay, and we outlined 4, which are up here in the breakout groups list, and you'll see that they're numbered. So what I'd like you to do is take a minute to choose which one is you're most interested in discussing. Remember the number, because that's the number of the breakout room you're going to go to. Okay, so how do we implement neighborhood plan goal number 17, which is a small scale resilience networks that facilitate communication and resource sharing between neighbors and businesses to enhance resilience? Okay. Secondly, how do we shift consumption from high greenhouse gas embodied items? So just like, for instance, plastics is made from petroleum and contributes to greenhouse plastic gases when it erodes. How do we provide basic needs and services when supply chains are disrupted? How do we do that close to home? How do we protect urban forests and riparian habitat, especially trees on private property? So just a minute. John, I'm going to just send you a personal chat here for a second.
Okay.
So what I'd like you to do is take a minute and choose one of those, and we'll get real-time feedback to see what people are interested in talking about.
I don't see the questions.
You don't? Oh, okay. There it is.
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry about that. Okay, we need to, okay. You need to make your choice and move on quickly.
It looks like for people who are co-hosts, you don't get to make a choice.
It's actually goal 18 we're talking about, not 17, but it shouldn't make any difference. The one that Louisa spoke so much of.
Okay, let's see what we have here. So if you chose number one, Joshua, do you want to open up the breakout groups?
Sure, yeah. I'm going to just try to name them really quick so that they're easier to...
Are they numbered?
Yeah.
Well, just so if you chose number one, go to breakout group number one. If you chose number two, go to breakout group number two.
I named the first couple though, so one.
Okay.